Good morning. Thank you all for coming for this special training session on how to be an effective PGE board member. So we'll just go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves. I'm Jan Pepper, I'm the CEO. I've been here since 2016 and was my first employee. So I've been in the energy industry for 30 plus years, doing renewables and power purchase agreements, financial analysis, all those kinds of things, all the things that we do here. So it's really great to be here, to be working at a public agency that's doing all the right things.
I'm Andy Stern. I think I know most of you. I'm the CFO, and I head up finance and operations, and I've been here a little over a year.
I'm Rick DeGolia. I'm on the board, vice chair, and have been on the board since 2014, I think, whenever we launched it, and have helped build PCE from the beginning. I'm really excited about what we've done and how far we've come and how much more we can do. And I am on the Atherton City Council.
Walter Melville, I'm with Systems Advisory Committee, and I'm a retired electrical engineer from SFPUC, and there I did interfaces with PGE and PGE contracts and oversaw some of the electrical design for the city.
Betsy Nash, I'm City Council in Menlo Park, and I'm an alternate to the PCE, and I'm really excited about it. I've been a customer for years, and this will be wonderful.
Clay Holstein, City Manager in Brisbane, and I'm the alternate. You'll probably see a lot of me this year. I don't know about next year, but at least for this year.
I'm Catherine Carlton, City Council member and board member from Menlo Park.
Ann Bartoletti, I am the board clerk, executive assistant to the CEO, and the office manager. I have a background in customer service and consumer protection, and I have been here since 2016. I was the second employee at Peninsula Clean Energy.
Leslie Brown, Director of Customer Care. I've been in the public energy industry for almost 20 years. Previously worked for a municipal utility before PCE. Been here for a little over 3 years. Started January of 2017, right before we were doing our mass enrollment.
Rafael Reyes, Director of Energy Programs, and I've been in the clean energy space for approximately 20 years, 12 programs, and been here for 2 years.
Okay, so we'll get started. So we'd like this to be very informal, and as you have questions or anything, just speak up. And there's a lot that we're going to try to go through today. So our agenda is we're going to go through history, so I'll go over that. And then Raphael will talk about the community energy programs. KJ Janowski will be coming and talking about marketing and communications, marketing and community relations. Leslie will talk about customer care. Jeremy Wayne will be coming to talk about our regulatory work. And then we're going to have a break for lunch. Then I'll be presenting the energy procurement. Siobhan is out of town, so I'm going to do that for her. Andy will talk about finances and budget, and we'll cover how we communicate with you and make sure that you're fully engaged, and then we'll have time for questions. But feel free to do questions throughout. It's not a hard schedule that we're on. And if we're good, we might finish early. But lunch, hopefully all of you ordered your lunches from Ann, and those will be coming at noon. So we'll start here with our history. So community choice aggregation, CCA, also known as community choice energy, but we don't use that term so much, was established actually right after the energy crisis in 2002. So if you might recall when we had blackouts at the turn of the century and prices went high and all of that, and PG&E had its first bankruptcy. At that time, community choice aggregation was formed. The bill was passed by or introduced by Carol Migden of San Francisco, and it allowed local agencies to form their own, to aggregate their electric load to serve their customers. So PG&E would still be the wires company, but folks could choose their own electricity supplier as a community through community choice aggregation. And it was established as an opt-out program, meaning that once a city decided, or any kind of governmental jurisdiction decided they wanted to do it, then everyone would be automatically in the program. If they didn't want to be in the program, they could opt out and stay with PG&E. So Marin Clean Energy was the first CCA that was established in 2010, and then we were the 5th in 2016. So in between us was Sonoma Clean Power, Lancaster Choice, and San Francisco's Clean Power SF. And now there are 19 CCAs. So this is actually our birthday today, because it was February 29th, 2016, when the JPA was actually formed.
The last February 29th.
Yeah, that's right. So we're either 1 year old today, or we're 4, whatever you want to call it. So that's pretty cool. So Rick said you've been involved since 2014, which is when San Mateo County first started exploring it. And there was a lot of work done for that first 2-year period of really bringing all of the constituencies together, bringing every city together, all of the stakeholders. And it was a very inclusive process. And
I'll post a happy birthday on the Facebook.
okay, great. And so because of and Dave Pine was really the impetus for getting this whole thing going. He's one of the supervisors and on our board. He was our founding board chair. And I think, because of that great outreach and getting everyone at the table at the very beginning, every city, when they voted to join PCE, voted unanimously to join. And apparently that's the only thing in San Mateo County where every city and every council member or supervisor voted unanimously. That's what you said, right?
Since 1856.
Since
The only
1856.
item that every council member voted for.
And both central committees of both parties supported it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I
So,
think it was 106 council members.
yeah.
It's really a remarkable achievement.
But I love the fact that it wasn't partisan either, that
No, not at all.
It's not partisan, yeah, at all. So because of that great support from the community and from all of you, we've been able to accomplish a lot. And, we think we're best of class of the CCAs, and we don't want to tell everyone that. We'll just keep that to ourselves.
You're on tape now.
Yeah, we'll delete that part. No, we're doing a lot of good things, and we're trying to push the needle on a lot of areas, and we'll talk about that more today. So I started in May of 2016, and we did our first enrollment of customers started the enrollment in July of 2016. It seems so long ago, but everyone got 4 notices that they were going to become a PCE customer. They got 2 before they were transferred over to us, 2 afterwards. We did the first round in October of 2016, the second round in April of 2017, and by the end of April of 2017, we had enrolled all of our customers, except not quite all of our net metered customers. With those, they were on a slightly different schedule. But by May of this year, we will have been in operation for 3 years, serving all of our customers. And our mission is that we're San Mateo County's locally controlled electricity provider. We are reducing greenhouse gas emissions and offering customer choice at competitive rates. Now, you all were at the board retreat, the strategic planning retreat, and this mission might change a little bit based on the input there, and we came up with a vision statement. So we're in the midst right now of doing our strategic planning. So, now that we've been in operation, there may be other things we want to include in that. So just at a glance, we serve all of San Mateo County, population of approximately 750,000 people. We have approximately 296,000 customers. Our participation rate is 97%. You may recall when we first started, we were talking about our opt-out rate. The participation rate is just the opposite. So our opt-out is about 2.5%, which is pretty remarkable and pretty low. And then we have 2 products and 2% of our customers have opted up to our 100% renewable product. I'll talk in a couple of minutes about what our other products are. As you know, we're not-for-profit, we're a joint powers agency, 22 board members, 1 from each of your cities and 2 from the county, and there's 27 staff members now. We have 2 positions that are open, so we're going to be at 29 soon, and we're growing fast. There's just so much to do, and you all keep wanting us to do more, so we do it. So this is the list of our board members, and Jeff Alfs is the current board chair, Rick is our vice chair, and in fact, nominations are open right now for board chair and vice chair. Rick and Jeff have both stated that they're willing to serve for another year, but if you're interested, throw your name in the hat.
Jan,
Yeah.
Just curious, the emeritus members, are they voting members?
They are not voting members. So Pradeep Gupta from South San Francisco and John Keener from Pacifica were part of the founding members. They are no longer on their city councils, but they were very engaged and very involved, and they wanted to continue to stay involved. So you'll see them coming to our meetings, and they bring great background. Pradeep worked in the electric utility business. He worked at Southern California Edison and at the Electric Power Research Institute, so he's a wealth of information. And John is just a great guy, and he was super involved when he was on the board as well. So we appreciate their continued involvement. So we have our board meetings are on the 4th Thursday of the month. And then we have 3 committees. There's the executive committee, which consists of 9 members, and the chair appoints those people to that committee. That meets on the 2nd Monday. And we use the executive committee to kind of vet some of the issues that we're going to bring to the board. So if there's a complicated program that Raphael wants to announce or to introduce, we bring it to the executive committee. We try to understand what kind of questions you all are going to ask, so that when we bring it to the board, we've got a full presentation and it'll be understandable for you, and also that the folks on the executive committee are familiar and can help move the issue along. We have the Audit and Finance Committee, which Andy runs on the staff side, and that meets every other month. And that's really to look at our finances, to work with the auditors and all of those kinds of things. And then we have our Citizens Advisory Committee, which Walter is on. There's 15 members from the community there, and they represent a breadth of constituencies in the region. So we try to select members who are geographically distributed throughout San Mateo County, who represent different interests. And we are very happy that they help us a lot with outreach to the constituencies that they know. So, for example, we have someone from Labor, we have the Sierra Club, we have someone from Boy Scouts. Walter's familiar with his community, so they're very helpful in all of our outreach efforts. And then we'll go more into our rates when Leslie gets into it. She'll talk a lot more about how we calculate our rates. But from the beginning, we have set our rates at 5% below PG&E. And our default product, the one that everyone was enrolled in when we started, is Eco Plus. And that is 50% renewable energy. And this year it's 95% greenhouse gas free. So we've been increasing the GHG free at 5% per year. And next year we'll be at 100% GHG free. And then the Eco 100 is priced at 1 cent per kilowatt hour more than the Eco Plus. And it's just slightly more expensive than PG&E. So from the beginning, I thought it was important for us to have our product be less expensive. Because when you've seen surveys, when people talk about wanting to be green, they want to be green. They say, oh yeah, I'll pay a little bit more. But when it comes right down to it, 2% of the people will pay more, which is actually what we're seeing with Eco 100. And so why make it hard if we can offer it at a lower rate so that everyone can be more green and it doesn't hurt them. In fact, it helps them. It helps us in meeting our overall mission, which is to reduce greenhouse gases, to move towards a more sustainable energy future. And then this is how it works. So we're basically, the first part here, we're the electric generation. So we purchase the cleaner electricity. PG&E still delivers it on their wires, and the bills come from PG&E. We'll talk about that later today as well. And then the customers are in our program, and all of the discounts that PG&E offers for low income, for medically vulnerable, continue to be there even if someone's a CCA customer. So that's the background. Is there anything I missed or any other questions you have about our formation? Pat?
On this, the price comparison that you put up, renewable energy was like highlighted. I thought we were going to focus more on the greenhouse gas free, which is 95% at this point. And just to point out for those that, and you'll probably cover this afternoon, the reason we're 50% and not much higher is because things like water isn't considered renewable, which is weird.
Large hydro, yeah.
Large hydro, which is, of course, where we get a lot. So it, in my mind, a lot more of it is renewable than 50%. It's just how it's counted.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the procurement
I'm super
strategy.
proud of 95%.
Yeah, yeah. So we started, I think, at 75%, and each year, actually, I don't have our goals here, but I'll go print those out and bring those to you later. But we have right now a set of 11, I think 10 goals, and yeah, I'll talk about that when I do the procurement. But there's a lot of specific procurement goals, and it was to get to 100% GHG free by 2021 and to be 100% renewable or clean. We're going to discuss that more on a time coincident basis by 2025, which means that for every hour we will match the amount of, we'll put the same amount of renewable energy on the grid as our customers are using. Right now we measure it on an annual basis. That we put on the grid the amount of renewable power our customers are going to use, but it's not time coincident. So there may be times that we're putting more power, more renewables on the grid than our customers are using, and then there's other times where there's less, and so we might be, or we are relying on the grid and fossil-based resources like gas plants. So we're trying to move to a situation where every hour we are putting onto the grid the same amount of renewables as our customers are using, so that we won't be relying on natural gas at all. And if we can show that that can be done in a cost-effective manner, then it's a model for the rest of the state and the country and the world to follow.
How does this compare to the other terminology?
CCAs?
CCAs.
That's a good question. I think all of them have a 100% product as an option for their customers to take, but they're all different as far as what their default products are. So I don't know offhand. Do you know, Leslie?
Most CCAs offer something similar to the Eco Plus option for their customers, which is like a slightly bit more renewable product than PG&E at a little bit of a discount. But it does really vary by service territory. Some of the newer CCAs that are launching are actually really just almost parity with PG&E, but still offering some options for customers that want to upgrade. Everyone's got a little bit of different flavor, kind of depending on when they entered the market and what were the goals of the boards that were forming those agencies.
I think you told me though that there isn't anyone that's got a bigger discount than us.
No, yeah, as far as discount goes, yeah. Well, the slight qualification, Pioneer on some of their rate classes does have a larger discount than us because they've been maintaining they haven't been adjusting their rates every time PG&E has been adjusting. So on some of the rate classes, they actually have around a 10 or 12% discount.
Yeah, and
And the parity for the newer CCAs is more on price. I think they all have a base product that's greener than PG&E's.
Not everybody, but most people are trying to do something a little bit more, more environmental. I think Apple Valley actually is really just at parity with what is being offered in SoCal Edison. I'm pretty sure a couple of the others have some products that are wanting to match. Yeah. But just, and then looking forward to having flexibility to do things differently going forward.
I'm actually surprised that there's only 2% enrollment in the PCE 100, Eco 100. And I'm wondering, do other groups have that option, and what is their percentage?
I believe everyone has some, like Jan mentioned, has an option to do 100% product. The enrollment in that 100% product, varies. One thing to mention, Portola Valley opted for 100% renewable for as their default option. So they're a small community here, but 90% of their customers are enrolled in Eco 100. There are some other communities out there that have started CCAs, some of the ones in Clean Power Alliance that have opted for that 100% renewable option. So there are folks out there that are at a higher enrollment percentage, not necessarily by elective choice by individuals, but because their communities decided for them to enroll them in 100% renewable option.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's only a 5% greenhouse gas free difference
I see
between
that, yeah.
the base and the higher priced Eco 100. So if there was a bigger difference, I'll bet there'd be more elections.
Yeah.
Also, two other points. One is Portola Valley they defaulted to the 100%, and yet they have the highest opt-out percentage in the county.
Yeah. And are people opting out to the Eco Plus, or are they opting out to PGE?
Opting out altogether. Yeah, they have about a 7 or 8% opt-out
About
rate for the
6%.
community.
They could have opted to the Eco Plus rather than the Eco 100, but
There's other
people don't
issues
think
that go
about
into
it so
that
much.
too, about why they didn't. I can let Jen, if you want to dig into it more. The other thing is we as an organization have not put a marketing push on getting people to convert. I know when KJ comes, you can ask her more about what she plans to do and what her thoughts are about that if you want. But we also have the dilemma that in 4 years, if we're successful, everything's going to be 100% anyway. And so, we've kind of weighed how do we deal with that transition, even if we did put a marketing push on.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just, it's curious. Gosh, a couple of years ago, Menlo Spark was in our community, and somehow my kids got who came home saying, you've got to do Eco 100, so we changed to Eco 100.
Yes.
And I've never sort of looked back. And so I'm just surprised that the 2%, that it's not higher.
Yeah, there hasn't been a big push. The board has not asked us to, we brought it to the board and said, should we devote resources to pushing Eco 100? And up till now, they've said no. So we haven't done a big push on that. So outside groups like what you have in Menlo Park, the community, the CEC in Burlingame, I don't know what that stands for, they also did a big push to get people to Eco 100, and actually they found that it was really hard to get people to move up. But I'll get the statistics for you just so you have it, and you can see what each city has and how much they've opted up. The other thing is that 15 of the cities have opted to Eco 100 for their municipal accounts. So I don't think San Bruno has. I'm sure Menlo Park has. Atherton probably has. Brisbane probably has. I can get that for you too.
Yes, San Francisco was fed off the head charging for the municipal accounts. So technically, they're not renewable, but they're fed off the big dams in Hetchatchee.
Yeah.
But that's only about 200 and some odd megawatts, so it's not that
Right.
big of a.
And that's San Francisco. They're actually not part of PCE. So San Francisco's separate CCA. Yeah.
First regulated utility.
Yeah. But I'll get the opt-outs and the opt-ups, and
I guess the other piece that would be interesting, because it might not make sense to be dwelling on this like I am. It's just, what is the benefit to PCE of people opting into the E for 100, or as Kat was saying, since we're at 95 GHG free now and going to 100, maybe it just isn't worth
It is worth it.
It is worth it.
It is worth it. And we'll, we'll talk about that more, about what it is we're trying to achieve with 100% renewable and what that means. But that's super technical stuff, and we'll stay tuned. Stay here, don't leave. Okay, so I think we'll turn it over to Raphael.
As Director of Energy Programs, I am responsible for community-facing programs on building and transportation electrification. And we have other community-facing programs associated with resilience and renewables, which are managed out of the Power Resources team, but I'll touch on that as well. First of all, here's our programs team. I'm very pleased that we have built up the team, particularly in this past year, with some really spectacular folks. So Philip Kobernick, who was formerly at Alameda County, deployed 100 electric vehicles into the Alameda County fleet and 151 charging ports. Deep experience in EV infrastructure. Shraddha Mutial comes to us formerly from the Bayran Energy Efficiency Program, where she managed the single-family home program. Also terrific background in the building space. Alejandra Posada was formerly at PCE in the marketing and outreach department, and she's been just spectacular in this role with engagement in the community, and particularly our low-income programs. And then Peter Ambil, who's one of our newer team members, came to us formerly from Tesla, where he had 4 years of experience there, focusing primarily on their EV infrastructure deployment. A little bit about the goals that have been guiding the program work. So the first 3 being PCE specific goals that are board mandated goals. One is, of course, 100% renewable by 2025, which was mentioned earlier, and on a time coincident basis is the ultimate objective, assuming it's cost effective. The second is to help the county go greenhouse gas free by 2045. And that's really the principal driver of the work that I oversee, is the second objective. The 20 megawatts of local power, which is driven again by the Power Resources team. And then of course we seek to align to associated state goals that we have. So the 5 million vehicles by 2030, megawatts of storage and so forth. So these are other kind of complementary goals that we try to align to as best we can. Now, we're in the second year, closing stages of the second year, and so there's been an evolution, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Some key terms that you'll hear us speak to. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but you'll see some of these acronyms or references. So demand response, which is helping shape the load at key points in time where that's necessary. Energy efficiency, of course, you'll see references to EE from time to time. We try to minimize our acronyms, but it slips out from time to time despite our best efforts. EV is one for sure. You'll see this acronym in the material, so as opposed to spelling out electric vehicle. Greenhouse gases. Load shaping I would call out here, so this is particularly important for us when we talk about time coincidence between the energy supply and the energy demand, right? Shaping the load so those two align is something that's very important across all of our community-facing work. Microgrids, of course, where you can have buildings or community-scale energy systems that can be independent of the grid when necessary. Natural gas, photovoltaics, I think those are pretty straightforward. Any comments on terms here? Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, a key driver of our work is greenhouse gas emissions. This pie chart that you're seeing here was developed by the County Office of Sustainability. It's the overarching picture of emissions in the county. This is from 2015, which is the most recent emissions inventory. A couple things to call out. This does not include air travel. It also does not include what are known as fugitive emissions, basically leaks that happen in the supply chain of natural gas. So actually the natural gas number here is significantly understated. But it gives you a frame of reference in terms of the emissions in 2015, and then with the establishment of PCE and the greener power supply, that has cut the electricity by more than half, greenhouse gases associated with electricity by more than half, really leaving transportation and building natural gas as the big targets. So that's the overwhelming majority of our emphasis in terms of our work. So in thinking about programs writ large, we have been using a set of really 4 major objectives that inform our programs, and this is obviously subject to board guidance. But the 4 of these areas are obviously first accelerating renewables and reducing greenhouse gases. So that brings in, well, what are all the measures, moving quickly on photovoltaics, electric vehicles, storage, energy efficiency, all the sort of measures and technical stuff that you hear us talk about deal with, getting that stuff out quickly, right, and reducing those greenhouse gases. The second major set of objectives come from thinking about how we deliver benefits to the community. And this is an area where the board is particularly important in terms of informing and setting direction for the programs team, is how do we think about what are the benefits that we need to deliver. So in the recent discussions in the board, the resilience program, of course, was a big part of that, right? How are we addressing the needs of the community? And there are a variety of stakeholders in the community. There's not just one set of residents or something. We have to think about, well, who are our customers? And there are different types of customers. What are equity considerations? What about workforce and economic factors? And Walter, for example, participated on a subcommittee to help inform a forthcoming workforce program that we're in the process of developing. We also think about geography and wanting to make sure that we're serving the entire community. The next major element is how we support this aligning of the supply and load. So this gets into issues of, okay, how do we shape the load? What type of generation are we bringing in? Responsiveness of that load, aggregation, grid services, and all of these kinds of things. And we can have further discussion of what those things are. But that significantly informs program. And then finally, well, what are our capacities? What can we do now based on the tools that we have? And how do we develop more and more so that we can have more impact? So staffing, technical capabilities, and financial capabilities all play into that. Yeah.
Yeah. San Bruno has roughly around 25 to 30 kW of ball field lights for the baseball fields. Mm-hmm. And from Mill Halides, I went to them and asked them what was their plan to switch into LED. And they went up. And so the question I had, was there still some sort of energy efficiency grant program that we could send the recreation director here to say, change out the light bulbs? Mm-hmm. I don't know the details of how long they're on, mm-hmm, and all the other stuff, but I talked to the recreation director and said they thought about it, but it was out of their budget league, was a nice way they put it. But Rec and Park is kind of a low budget other than
yes.
So
It's actually a great question. So a couple of thoughts. One is we don't currently have any programs targeting efficiency, and that's partly because there are other players already covering a lot of that ground. But in thinking about load shaping, those lights come on from a load shaping standpoint at the worst possible time, right at the evening ramp. And so, that's the sort of thing that potentially down the road, as we start thinking about this aligning demand and supply, we might want to do stuff like that, although we haven't set specific direction on that item.
I was just thinking that there may be more than one set of ball field lights
Oh, for sure.
in the county, and you might be able, it might add up to, hundreds of kilowatts that may be relatively easily
Yeah.
decreased, but I think when you go from metal halide to LEDs, it's,
Yes.
I think roughly around a 2/3 drop.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be for sure significant.
But then, the issue is the amount of labor to get up to the 45 poles.
Right. So, so that's a great idea, and we certainly are constantly taking input on ideas like that. And what I'm going to do here is quickly go over our current program roadmap and what we're doing, and then close with really questions and areas where we particularly could use additional information and direction from the board. So let me move through this quickly in the interest of time. We do have a high-level roadmap that was approved by the board in late 2018. As I mentioned, we're in the closing stages of our second year, so really still under development in terms of the overall program scope. But here, starting in 2018, the decision was made to get out the door things that we could do quickly. And so the initial target was personal vehicles, and so we have a range of programs there. An electric vehicle ride and drive campaign, which has been shown as one of the most effective things to get people to consider an electric vehicle adoption. We have a new electric vehicle incentive program. We also have a low-income incentive program. And then in the closing stages of our first big program, which is the electric vehicle infrastructure incentive program. So that's going to be a workplace and multifamily charging incentive program. And so that's our first double-digit, if you will, program that's going to be rolling out later this year. We also have a variety of pilots and forthcoming items. So we have a smart charging pilot to help, again, shape the load of when charging is happening. We have a lot of old housing stock, and charging access is going to be a challenge there. And so we're exploring low power technologies, meaning 110, 120 plug, where a lot of EV drivers are already using that, but looking at how do we do that at scale. And then a variety of forthcoming additional areas that we're looking at. So possibly curbside charging, which we're exploring, municipal fleets, transportation network companies, Lyft and Uber. We estimate 1 million miles a day in the county. It's a really huge target, and so getting that electrified is very, very important. So development is ongoing on that. The next area that we've been starting work on is in buildings. As we discussed, natural gas, a big deal. I want to acknowledge the incredible work that Menlo Park has done here, really creating the leadership reach codes that have become the model for not just our county, but Santa Clara County and others are starting to look at that as the model. And we were pleased to be able to provide some technical assistance to the staff on that. At first we were a little nervous, to be perfectly candid, but it became clear that this was a much better alternative, and now that's the alternative we're encouraging folks to consider. So the Reach Code effort, which started last year and has now been extended by the board for another 2 years for municipal technical assistance and developer training and contractor training, so that's a key part. And then we're also now looking at developing a consumer education program. So by and large, consumers are, not well informed about the benefits of electrification and are particularly concerned about their stoves. And so education around induction stoves as an alternative is an important part of that.
Robbie, can I ask just a quick question?
Yes,
On
please.
the contractor training,
Yeah.
is that in place? You're ready?
Not yet.
Yeah.
So we are in the closing stages of the contract with our key consulting partner on that. I'm hoping that we're maybe 3 months from being able to come out the door with the contractor side.
Great.
And will that include residential, multifamily units?
Yes.
That's the feedback I'm getting from our developers, is they're very excited about this, but are very concerned that our codes are pushing what the
Yes.
state standards are.
Yeah, so there are two pieces. The contractor piece is going to take a little longer to sort out. The develop piece, we're essentially already doing that, and we're going to deepen that. So that will, and that will include a range of different ways developers can engage with us. Some of it is just, email a question and get a response back if it's something simple, to, roundtable workshop style modes, and then finally a deep one-to-one kind of engagement with developers, architects, and engineers who are like, I have this building that I'm trying to build and I can't figure out how to do it. I've never done it before, sorts of questions. So I'm really, frankly, quite excited about that and the opportunity there, because we're already getting some of those questions.
My understanding is, and I'll say this is from Greystar, who's got 3 large multifamily units.
Yes.
Developments in Menlo Park that they're proposing.
Yes.
Or actually, they've got under SB 330. And they're saying that, while I believe the technology, they actually see some of the technology there, we're ahead of the state codes. And
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so in fact, Greystar called us. And one of the areas that we are also hoping to engage local governments are maybe some harmonization around the codes. And there are areas, particularly on the EV side, where power management and making sure that the code can accommodate power management can be an important piece. So that was one area where there were particular concerns from Greystar.
And whatever we can do, obviously not to backslide.
Of course, yes, yes. Other comments or questions? All right, so moving along here, moving to distributed generation. So this is now, these are programs that the Power Resources team is responsible for. And the first is a municipal critical facilities program. So we have a scoping effort underway now. And that will turn into some sort of procurement process to support local governments in getting solar and storage systems on their critical facilities. I'll come to you in just a second. And then forthcoming, we also have a program around addressing the needs of the medically vulnerable, which we know with the power shutoffs, that's a really serious problem. And then broader solar storage systems across a range of different sectors. So that's work in progress in developing that. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, the question with the critical facilities is, you have to forgive me if my experience could be a couple years old, is for the large critical facilities, unfortunately diesel was king because it had the most power, and you couldn't use gas, you couldn't use, was you have to assume a 72-hour earthquake. Has the industrial-sized Tesla power walls come up to providing enough power to power a municipal building for 72 hours?
Well, so there are several things to say about this. There are a range of different failure scenarios or disaster scenarios, and there is not one solution that's perfect across the entire range. So if you look at, let's say, earthquakes, where you're going to have, a grid outage, you're going to have, distribution of liquid fuels is going to be very difficult. solar storage solution is very good under that scenario. Short-term PSPS, particularly with a facility that may not have a lot of load that would benefit from having a sizable battery, is a more economically a more difficult scenario to address with today's clean energy solution. So it's understandable that people are looking to low-cost, diesel generators for that. That said, we do have a pilot project that has been a proposal that's been submitted to the CEC for a company called Forum Energy, which was co-founded by Dr. Yetmin Chang of MIT. That name may not mean anything outside of folks in the battery space, but that name is quite famous in the battery space. This is a researcher who's established multiple companies. And they have aspirations to create a technology. Actually, they've created a technology for ultra low cost, extremely long duration storage, and the signs are very promising about what they're doing. So we partnered with them to help this pilot off the ground, and then within hopefully 2 years or so, we would have something really big to share in that department. And just checking on time, so moving along here. Budget, so currently for the last calendar year, we've spent just under $1.4 million. We are still in a ramp-up phase, frankly. So the first year was about just getting something started quickly. The second year, which is we're coming to a close on, has been really about putting the foundation for a larger scale program. And looking ahead, in the current forecast, we're looking at a ramp up of the budget. I should add that as part of the strategic planning process, we're now looking to align to the 2045 goal and what that means in terms of scaled program. And so, there will be, we'll be coming back to the board with more information about how we actually get 2045 done, and what that means from the standpoint of near-term program and budget steps. So a lot more coming down the pike from that. Then, lastly, these are some of the questions that from a staff perspective where the board's direction and input are particularly valuable. Are there particular community needs that we need to be aware of as priority community needs? Major question. We're constantly looking for more information on that. Number two, particular partnerships or strategies that we should be thinking about, like, the idea of the ball field lights, that's a great idea. The code work that Menlo Park did, another great strategy recommendation that came up and that we adopted. Community concerns that we should be aware of. So cities have been particularly valuable in engaging us with developers to help us through the code process. So that's an example of that. And then reaching underserved communities. It's not, frankly, easy. We can see the benefits, for example, with electric vehicles. It's a huge part of the household budget, the second largest item, but actually getting electric vehicles effectively into that community is not easy for their whole variety of real challenges. So helping us think about how to do that is particularly valuable.
Do you want input on that now or later?
Comments now are absolutely welcome.
So we have a new building that's, that Facebook is putting money into, our Bellhaven Community Center and Library.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, and it will be a critical infrastructure in the case of an emergency. And as part of that, actually, one more backtrack. We're on an incredibly fast timeline. They're hoping to have the building, Kat knows more about this than I do, but they're hoping to have the building up and running in 2.5 years or less. And as part of that, there needs to be a backup power. And currently they are proposing diesel power. Mm-hmm. And they have promised to...
the fire issues with the battery at this point.
Okay. So you know more than I do. They promised to talk to PCE before they make a final decision.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a tremendously valuable input that you could provide there.
Absolutely, that's great. That's great. And that's the sort of thing.
Menlo Spark is also
So
working on his
the
approach
thought
to.
along that is that if it really is long-term backup for emergency, diesel can be maintained longer than battery.
If you can get the diesel.
Yeah, and the battery, there are very serious fire issues. If there's an earthquake, that the battery itself can cause fire and fuel itself. And to date, there aren't, there are questions about the battery being crushed, the battery itself burning the building down, even if it did survive the earthquake.
Yeah,
Until battery technology gets better, it's dubious.
yeah, the issue, again, several years ago when Laguna Honda went in, was there weren't any seismically rated zone for battery cabinets you could put in. You know, they had switchgear which was zone 4 rated, but the battery cabinets
They're not there
weren't,
yet.
yeah, they weren't rated, and in order to be legally required, you have to go through all the rating processes. And so unfortunately, your choices are diesel for large loads. For little small loads like valve lots, you could, in certain instances, you could use propane, but that generally was limited to like 10 kW or less.
What's the timing for the Bellhaven Community Center?
2 years on the subcommittee.
So you're just doing the planning now, and then in 2 years it should be built?
They're running with scissors. They hope to open it in 2.5 years.
They're
Okay.
breaking ground by January.
Okay, so they're planning stages of it.
Right, so, I mean, there is a year and a half of, if the technology gets better, it's not written in.
There are some alternate technologies that are not as, that have a lower fire risk.
But for the current technology, the fire risk is too high considering what the building's gonna be used for.
Yeah,
Justin Murphy is the person to talk to
Uh-huh.
in the city.
Justin Murphy.
The only suggestion I may have is that you might put a conduit in so that if something is available later on, you have the space and the conduit in so you don't have to dig up the slab in
Right.
case something changes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that may, I mean, sometimes space is at such a premium, you can't do that, but it's,
I think it's pretty obvious for all people that are discussing it that we would like to do electric, and if and when the technology, as you say, the ratings get there, it'll be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing, we're trying to look at alternative technologies and what's out there, and,
Let us know.
so, yeah. But it's good to know about this project.
It's a big one. Also, we are just about to propose a climate action plan in Menlo Park. We obviously see transportation and building as the two big pieces that we can tackle.
Yes,
The more help we can get on the building side,
yes,
the better. Beyond the REACH codes, but actually like
yes.
carbon, the cement, anyway, all the materials. Because we're very interested in pushing that if we have technology. And also, as you were saying before, getting contractors so that I don't believe we are ready to push residential, but if we can encourage, I don't think we'll mandate, but if we can encourage residential
Yes,
to move as they replace the water heaters, the furnaces and all. But right now, people are getting pushback from contractors who don't have this.
yes. That's helpful, yes. And we have met with some members of the Menlo Park Environmental Commission, so Tom Cabot and Josie,
Josie Gallard.
yes.
Excellent.
And they were great, and we're actively looking at, and when I mentioned the 2045 strategy, that's something we're actively looking at, and figuring that out.
One last comment is, I've had an electric car for 6 years. As part of that, we tried to limp along on the 110 volt and ended up having to increase. I know that that is a hurdle for many people. And I'm now hearing that you don't have to do that, so whatever information, education can be out there to, how do we do it without requiring, how do more people adopt electric cars without having to increase their electric on their house? That would be great.
Yeah.
And then the other piece that just puzzles me personally is, so we've opted into a plan where we charge the car and we set it to start charging at midnight. And now I'm hearing that that's not good with load balancing. So that's PG&E has this program, obviously.
Yeah.
Just whatever
Yes.
needs to be done there.
Yes. They're.
I get incentives, obviously, to charge at night.
Yes. Yes. And
We're not getting solar power.
When we're not getting solar power, exactly, when we're not getting solar power, and then I hear other people saying we should be doing that during the day, and so how do we reconcile?
yes,
Thank you.
that's helpful. Thank you. Other thoughts?
PG&E's totally changed their time of day service for when peak and non-peak is. So now, I think it's true, the peak period is 4 to 9 p.m.
That has been for 6 years now.
So, and that just came into practice. So so the time between 9 p.m. and 4 p.m. the next afternoon, including from the daytime, most of the daytime, is at off-peak. So you're being encouraged to charge your car in all of that period of time now.
Actually, there's 3 tiers within when you sign up with an electric car charging, and there's, it's cheap, it's most expensive in that high level time.
Right.
But during the day, it's still not as cheap as.
But because they came in with new time of use rates, if you really look at it, it's cheaper for you not to be on the EV rate. It's cheaper to be on the TOUA rate.
Really?
It depends.
Oh, how
It depends
interesting.
on what your home's usage is, and
Yeah.
I know you have a solar system, I don't know
Yeah.
if you also have a solar system at your home. Yeah, so your situation's a little bit different than hers
Okay.
because of your solar
Yeah,
system.
but PG&E does offer a system where you can go into it and it does a rate comparison. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the tool that they have is actually very
Surprising,
good.
actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to scoot over here so I can see the screen.
Thank you.
Okay, well, happy Leap Day. So I was thinking next weekend we switch to daylight savings time and we lose an hour, but we actually gain a whole day, so it's all good. So I'm going to talk about marketing and community relations. And
Since I don't have a lower third.
sure. Yeah, got it. And the main goal that we work on, that is one of our agency's overall goals, is that we work on inspiring action and driving participation in Peninsula clean energy programs. When I talk about programs, I'm talking about not just the things that Raphael was describing to you, but also Eco 100 opt-ups and things like that. So Raphael's team and my team work together very closely. You may see a little bit of redundancy in some of the things that he talked about and I talked about, but that is a good thing. So the marketing responsibilities, these are the main ones. First is to know the customer. So that means understanding what their needs are, and I'll be talking a little bit more about some of the ways that we do that and ways that we'd like to solicit support from board members to do that, and also from CAC members to do that. It's also important that we improve awareness and perception of Peninsula Clean Energy, and this is not just, it certainly isn't in any way an ego-boosting thing or because we have to have our brand on everything out there. The reason that we're making efforts around awareness and perception is because we need the credibility and the solid reputation in order to be an organization that recommends actions for people to do, that inspires them to take certain actions, to participate in programs. So it's really a foundational element. And then engagement is extremely important. So getting customers and other stakeholders to take actions, large and small, that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So some of the actions that we'll want them to take will just be baby steps, but it's basically the beginning part of the customer journey for them. And finally, of course, maintaining participation in our overall services. So right now we have a 97.5% participation rate, and we don't want that to fall very much, if at all. So a lot of the actions that we would take in that regard tend to be a little bit on the defensive side, because we don't really need to be going out and getting the people who had opted out to come back on board, although it would certainly be nice if they did. So in terms of knowing the customer, there are several ways that we try to get input about what the customer needs are. One of them is straight up market research. So for example, right now we have a survey that's going out in the field next month that will be tracking impacts of the work that we've been doing in the EV programs last year. So we had the EV discount program, we have the Drive Forward program that supports used electric vehicle purchases, and one of the big components of that whole program was really to improve awareness and make people understand, help people to understand what the benefits are of going to electric vehicles. We know there are still obstacles. Betsy, you were talking about a few of them, but what we'll be doing in this research, part of this research, is to really understand what kind of progress we've made and what kinds of obstacles still remain. In addition, that same research is going to be basically crafting a baseline for building electrification so that we can understand where people are right now on issues of building electrification as we are about to launch, as Raphael described, a stakeholder and customer awareness program later this year. In addition, we're trying to track the awareness and perception because we want to see, are we perceived as the credible, solid reputation organization that we feel that we need to be? Community relations, we're out there in all parts of the county all the time, every month, at least once a month, doing different activities, being part of festivals that occur across the county. And this is a way where we're meeting people and we're gathering anecdotal or qualitative input about what are some of the things that they're concerned about. And so that feeds into our whole process as well. We're also, Raphael alluded to the desire to get more input about the needs of low-income communities. So we are in the process of developing a listening program that will engage community-based organizations so that we can understand what are some of the needs of that particular population within the county. In terms of awareness and perception, we have several activities that we undertake in that area. I've mentioned reputation already, but how do we try to enhance that reputation? Part of that is developing ourselves as thought leaders. So that relates also to things like media relations, so making sure that Jan and other spokespeople are put forward in opportunities to show their expertise in this area, to advise other CCAs as they're coming on board or thinking about coming on board. We have a lot of things in the pipeline in terms of content that help to establish our expertise in the areas in which we operate. We are very active in terms of media relations and also collaborating with other CCAs, particularly those in the Bay Area, around things that we do together in the media relations area. And I'll be talking a little bit later about some of the ways that we'd like to work with the board or can work with the board if you all desire that. Storytelling is really important. And when I talk about storytelling, I'm talking about all kinds of different ways to tell a story. You can tell a story, and you've probably heard of 6-word stories. You can tell a story in really short text. If you haven't heard of 6-word stories, a classic example is the Hemingway, baby shoes for sale, never used. It's kind of sad, but it's a story. Anyway, but stories also can be, for example, the kinds of stories that we'll be telling in our community report that we're working on right now, and we're targeting late April, early May for that being available. And so that's going to include stories of people who have been impacted by the programs that we've developed. Things like the schools program. We'll have some teachers interviewed. We'll have some businesses interviewed, and that will be one of the many ways that we'll be telling stories. We have lots of channels to distribute these stories, to deliver these stories. I think about owned media, earned media, and paid media. So owned media are things like our newsletter, our social media channels, our website. Earned media is things that we get in publications through media relations, and then paid media, of course, is advertising, both digital advertising, print advertising, and other things that we do for which we pay for that awareness. And lastly, participation in those community events that I mentioned as a way of listening and understanding the needs of the community. That's also a way that we increase our awareness and our perception among the audiences that we want to reach. Engagement and participation, we have lots of ways that we do this. One of them is that we do a lot of work with community-based organizations. So we launched a program last year, which was an outreach grant program. And we solicited input, we solicited actually proposals from a number of community-based organizations, and we provided them with a grant so that they could help us spread the word either about particular programs or about Peninsula Clean Energy in particular. So examples of organizations that to which we provided grants are El Concilio, Actera, Peninsula Family Services, Sound of Hope, which broadcasts radio in Cantonese and Mandarin. So these are great ways for us to leverage our communications out into particular segments of the community. We're also going to be using our relationships with community-based organizations to try and reach medically vulnerable populations in the county as we deploy the resilience program, which I'm sure Raphael alluded to when he spoke earlier. We also maintain relationships, obviously, with the municipalities, the county, the staff and elected officials. We're an active member of RICAPS, where we're constantly in contact with the sustainability coordinators and some of the public information officers and other staff, depending on the particular municipality. We have a very close relationship with the San Mateo County Office of Education, and that also enables us to deploy some really great programs into the schools. I'm happy to talk more about those. We had quite a session in the board meeting on Thursday night where we described those schools-based environmental literacy programs. The marketing department is also responsible for facilitating the work with the Citizens Advisory Committee. And that committee, the CAC, is a committee of the board. It is a Brown Act committee. You're a member, right, of the CAC. And the idea of the CAC is to basically involve the community, representatives of the community, and all the CAC members have a really good perspective either on what's going on with sustainability concerns, construction concerns, other issues within their communities. And so they're a great sounding board for us, but they're also a great way to reach out to communities and share whatever programs or information we would like to get out there. We're also promoting participation in community energy programs and Eco 100 opt-up. And lastly, as I mentioned, we want to make sure that we are maintaining the high participation rate that we have in our Eco Plus and Eco Plus services as well. So this is the marketing team. Myself, several of the members are new. The manager of marketing communications, Jerry Gottheil, joined us in December. And we also just recently brought on Michael Arnaldo, who joined us at the end of January. And TJ Carter, who's been with us for quite a while, came out of the Office of Sustainability, great relationships with the county, and that's really awesome. And one of the things he does is, of course, the schools engagement program. Michael is in charge of doing some of the upgrades to our website, all sorts of other digital media stuff, social media, et cetera. Kirsten Andrew Schwend, who has been with with Peninsula Clean Energy since more than 4 years ago today, I guess is the anniversary, the 4-year anniversary, was instrumental in helping to get the CCA adopted, and has moved into a position as of last fall focused entirely on community relations. And so she's responsible for a lot of these community outreach events and relationships with the sustainability coordinators at the cities, and is also working very closely with the programs team on the resiliency programs that we're deploying. And Carlos Morena, who came to us from Rethink Waste, is an instrumental part of that whole program. We also use outside services, so we have a PR consultant, Darren Good, who's been working with us since December. We have a research firm that we've recently engaged, Heiner and Partners. They're working with us on the research that we've talked about. We have a creative agency that helps us with graphic design, and also we've occasionally used a media buyer and other types of services when we need to on an outsourced basis. So the board interaction. So some of the things that we'll be coming to the board for are things like approving contracts with some of those outside vendors. So you saw there were a number of boxes that are outside services. But another area where we can work with the board, have worked with the board, and would like to work with the board more in the future, and this applies to the CAC as well, is on some of the media relations types of things. So op-eds that we might do jointly. That can be a really powerful way to comment on certain policy issues or certain environmental issues that we want to highlight. Community events. Let us know if there are really important community events that may not be on our radar. We tend to have a lot of them on our radar. We can't do them all. But if there are really pivotal ones or new ones that are emerging, please let us know about those. And community-based organizations, particularly community-based organizations at this time that are able to connect us with medically vulnerable populations. Kirsten has established a really good relationship with Dr. Schrudy, who is the county's public health director, but they are, of course, very much engaged with the whole coronavirus, and now there is an individual in the county who has contracted it, is confirmed, et cetera. So it may be hard to get some attention from them, but we would like to structure a more in-depth relationship with them, in particular around the medically vulnerable work. I mentioned relationships with city staff. If there are new sustainability coordinators that we haven't contacted yet, do let us know, that in particular. Social media engagement. For example, on Twitter, we will be highlighting certain issues. We are doing that now. For example, we've just recently were highlighting Mustang 2, groundbreaking, and we've consulted with the attorneys, and it is okay to @mention board members as long as we don't @mention more than 2 of them in the same tweet, because it can end up being a serial meeting and a violation of the Brown Act. But we're also very happy to have board members share, reshare, retweet any of our social media posts, especially those that are particularly relevant to your communities. I mentioned the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we are working now on, we have several open positions on the Citizens Advisory Committee because terms are up, but many of those people, there's only one exception, would like to re-up. So that's a really important piece of what we're doing. And then also input from stakeholders. We also have a board marketing subcommittee, and that is a sounding board and a place for input to the marketing team, and that's another way that we engage with the board. So, questions?
The Citizens Advisory Committee, is the list on the website?
It is.
Wonderful.
The roster is on the website, and the terms are on the website, when their terms expire. Any questions? Okay.